Every time you say the Ed, Fred, Ned thing, it always throws me off. My name is James Stowe. I'm a graphic designer, illustrator, and arts educator.
Great to have you here, as always. And
Yes,
I want to get our names up on the screen. There we go. There are our names. And as you could see just a second ago, you can get a little idea of what we're going to be talking about today. I'll put it back on. Creative networking.
one of my absolute favorite topics.
Yeah.
Absolute favorite topics.
And anyone who was here with us a month ago, you heard that we were talking about pricing and how to use not only the Guild's handbook to price your work, but also how to use your community to price your work. And here, I'll hold up the book. And one of the things that we realized, James and I, is that we should talk a little bit more about how you build that community. How do you build a community of creatives who can help you build your business, who can help answer questions for you, who can just be there when you have to complain about a client or complain about how a website went down. And so James and I got together and we were talking about it for a bit. And there's a lot that we can say, and we only have 30 minutes. I want to remind everyone that we are open to chats, and looks like Ray is here. Ray, always great to see you. Ray is on LinkedIn with us, and he is on almost every time with us. So thank you, Ray. Great to see you. And so here we are. We want to talk about a creative network. So put your questions in the chat wherever you are. You could be on LinkedIn, YouTube, X, or no, that's Twitter.
I almost asked you what X was.
I'm trying to be really cool here and not say, X, formerly known as Twitter. I think I sound so much cooler when I just say X. So let's leave it at that, all right?
Sure. I'm sure that's what Elon Musk would like you to think. Yes.
Oh, God.
Absolutely.
All right. Why don't you start us off, because now you put a bad taste in my mouth.
Yeah, I'm sorry, everybody. All right. One of the things that you had mentioned is building community. And before we really get into how to do that, I think it's important to touch on the idea that we live in a wonderful time of connectivity that you might not necessarily need to build a community. Communities exist out there. It's a matter of connecting to the right community. And I think an important part of that is understanding why you're seeking out what community you want. Obviously, there are lots of different motivations for doing so. Probably one of the most primary ones would be to expand your reach, gain more clients. But I think, for me at least, and I've made creative networking and community building a really important and integral part of what I do. For me, it is about creating a community of trust. When I join a community, or whether I develop a community, what I'm looking for are like-minded designers that I can come to, and I value their opinions. They value my opinion, and we're able to share ideas in a safe environment. So coming into that, listening to the voices that are around you and cultivating professional relationships and I don't want to go so far as to say friendships, but those can develop as well. Absolutely, they can develop. My career path, I started in the industry as a freelance illustrator. From that, I went into full-time design, worked in full-time design for about 15 years, built up to becoming creative director. And at one point in my career, I decided that I wanted to be a freelancer again. So I took a big jump, went back into freelance. First thing I realized is that I lost my community. I was the head of an art department of anywhere between 5 and 8 people that I trusted. I trusted their opinions. I worked off them so often that when I went back to the world of freelance, I was by myself, completely alone, and I missed that community. So one of the first things that I did in returning to freelance is I tried to build that community for myself. I knew in my immediate area there were designers that I admired. I reached out to those designers. Um, I suggested we meet once a week. Um, and from that came a community that meets both locally and online now every week and has for 8 years.
Is that
Um,
Freelance Fandango?
that's the Freelance Fandango. Yeah. So I host Freelance Fandango here with the Guild's assistants every Sunday. We meet for 2 hours. I also still maintain, although don't get to often go to it, the local Fandango that has been taken over by another coordinator, which is wonderful. So I was able to build a community that exists now outside of my involvement in that community, which is wonderful. And honestly, one of the things that when building a community, I think is super important. You want that community to be able to stand on its own with or without your um, involvement in it. So as you get to a point, it's not about leading, it's about being part of something bigger. Uh, so I love the idea that Freelance Fandango, the local version, goes on. I mean, I miss it, and I will constantly like, oh, I miss you guys, right? Um,
That's the in-person version, right?
but there's a part of me. What's that?
That's the in-person
That's
version.
the in-person version, correct? Yeah. Um, and so for me, I've always been someone that feels that community is super important. It's funny that I bring up the live version of Freelance Fandango when I became, if you don't mind me indulging me for
Not
like
at all.
a minute or two, um, when I decided to make that change, there was a designer here locally, and I'd like to drop his name. He's also a member of the guild. Connected me with the guild initially. His name is Mark Monlux.
Oh yeah, Mark.
Yeah, he became a mentor to me in a time where I really needed someone that was willing to show me the ropes, and because I had worked for a company for like 15 years. That had been the bulk of my career. Before that, the freelance work I did was in my 20s. I didn't know what I was doing. Now in my 40s, going back to freelance work, I had a lot. Like there was a big leap for me to make. And he was finding a mentor like that, finding a mentor like Mark Monlux, who was able to sit down, walk through a lot of the stuff with me, share his how he does contracts, how he
Mm.
like works with clients, what he values. It was incredibly important to my career. And that relationship existed because of that kind of trust. The idea that um, you can find people, other designers that you don't feel you need to compete with, that you can work with to build a better community. And I think the community of designers that we've developed here in my area is stronger because of relationships like that. So if you are, if you often are thinking like, well, I can't work with other designers because they are my competition, I I would strongly encourage you to change your position on that, to think of other designers more as assets, I work with a group of designers that if a client comes to me and I'm not the right fit for their project, I have designers that I trust that uh, I can send those clients to, and then we have relationships, that designer and I, where if I do provide them with work, they they give me a little finder's fee. Like we work together, and we try to create um, safety nets and like creative, just like a nice creative. I don't know where I'm trying to go here. I don't want to say the word community again because I
Well,
feel like I'm
you
laboring the word community, but community is so important
yeah.
to my take on design. And honestly, when I came to the guild, that was one of the first things that struck me as so just important to me. I was able to connect with uh, professionals, all volunteer, for the most part, volunteer, who cared about creating a better environment for all working designers in our country, and that's
Like
me. Yeah, go ahead. I'm sorry.
for
I've been
example,
dominating a lot of the conversation, but it's
no, I
a
don't mind at all.
subject I'm very passionate about.
I can tell, and I hate to jump in because I love what you're saying, but I want to add to that, not to pat the guild too much on the back, but with the advocacy work at the very least, it's huge how they have our backs, and I think that's building community. Another way of saying have each other's back, and the guild has very much done that. And kind of, if I've been volunteering with the guild for at least 8 years, heavily for at least 6 to 8 years, I think. And during that time, I've I've testified in front of Congress. I've gone to it was they were actually in New York at the time, so I went down to New York, and I testified on the first sale doctrine years ago, and that was the most amazing experience. And through that experience, I learned how much is going on behind the scenes, not just with the guild. There's the Authors Guild as well. There's so many different, and I feel badly not listing a whole huge number like the Copyright Alliance. But there's so many organizations that have our
Oh,
back,
sure.
and it's really nice to be aware of that. And you can find, if anyone here is interested in finding a community, and X isn't quite right for you, and I don't mean Twitter, but there are other options out there where you can find your peoples, or even just your interests, and through your interests you find your peoples. And that is one of the things I love about volunteering, because there are things that as a volunteer I never would have thought that I would do. And through the guild, I have gotten many. We talked about this. I know Joe and I talked about this last week when you couldn't make it, James. That the various guild members have given me jobs and guided me in my pricing. I mean, that is huge.
Yeah, that's really key. I mean, we talked a lot about that uh, last month.
2 months ago, yeah.
Yeah, 2 months ago. Yeah, it's the pricing part is really because we are all, for the most part, if you're a freelance designer, you don't really know what to charge.
Can we pause for a
You
second?
sure, yeah.
Dominion Works. If you're still here, sorry, I just saw your message. We are talking about being a creative and finding ways to create a creative network so that you can help build your business, build your clientele, build on what you're doing so that you can be more successful. That's basically what we're talking about. I hope you can.
We're all over the place with it, though.
Oh yeah, we jump around. That's the best part. And Ray commented, "Oh, you know what? I'll just show it." So why don't you go on ahead? I totally interrupted you. Please.
That's all right. No, I'm and it's an important topic to go back to is um, the best way for us to be valued as designers and to be able to make the amount of money that you feel that you need to make. And I'm sorry if what I am doing is like talking around subjects, but it is important to understand that the amount of money that you charge needs to be the value you need it to be, whatever that number is.
Right.
And communicating and sharing with other designers, whether it is in a freelance capacity or whether you're working for somebody, understanding the value of your work compared to the value of other people's work and supporting each other in that. I think I've talked to hundreds of designers in the time that I've been doing things like this, and almost universally I can tell you that designers undervalue their work 100%.
Yeah.
And the best way to counter that is to communicate with other designers and share what works, what doesn't work, and setting. Yes, exactly.
We talked about that in previous Mind Your Creative Business. Value-based pricing versus what many of you might be doing, hourly rate pricing. You're devaluing by saying, okay, I'm going to charge you this much, and then you per hour, and then it takes an hour, but the amount of experience you have doesn't work into that algorithm. Go ahead.
It's funny because I kind of do. I use hourly rate as a way to. Well, I don't even know if I should share this, but I use my hourly rate to kind of scare off clients in doing more work than outside the scope of our original arrangement.
Okay.
I use value-based pricing on all projects. Any work outside the scope then becomes part of an hourly rate. I'm charging you by the hour, and my hourly rate is really high. So the idea is clients stay within my scope so they don't have to deal with an hourly rate. And I think often I am a big proponent in that clients never need to know how long it takes for me to make anything. You're paying me for my expertise. You're not paying me for how long or how short it takes me to do something.
Yeah.
And I think that's really important. I know it's completely off the topic, but it's important. It's important for us to talk
It's
about
an example of us going off the rails here. But what I really want to get, I want to kind of segue. It's no longer a smooth segue, but I want to segue into finding people in your network, or creating a network of people with ethics, people who are interested in lifting you up, lifting up the industry. And by that, I mean, if I illustrate for a graphic designer, I don't want them lowballing me. They need to talk to their client and explain to them what my value is and why I am worth what my quote says. And we need to work back and forth that way. It's really important that we all take care of each other. And if we have a client who is not going to approve the an appropriate amount, then they need a talking to. They need to have it explained to them what happens if you use stock photos. Or
can I reframe that? They need to be part of the community that they're in. And when they're outliers like that, they are devaluing and doing damage to that community. So it is important to. I don't like to frame it often, and I apologize if I'm belaboring, but I don't like to be punitive when it comes to that kind of thing. I like, more often than not, designers undervalue their work because of a lack of confidence or a lack of exposure, a lack of understanding. So it is important for other designers in the community to support them and bring them in than to be like, you're devaluing everybody else because you're not charging enough, right? It's really about, and you're saying the same thing. I'm just like, I'm open handing and not like.
I appreciate that. We try to come in to mind your creative business with a lot of positivity.
Mhm.
Sometimes one of us may not have the right positive way spin on words, and that's why I love working with James, because I know he has my back. Are you
Ooh,
part of my
Ray.
community?
Yeah. Wait, what?
Are you part of my community with my
Who?
having my back? You. Wow.
Yeah.
Oh,
What?
that's amazing. Sorry,
Of
that
course.
came out of the blue. Okay, so Ray has a question there. Do you want to jump on that?
Community building, quite that particular one.
Yeah, right there.
I'm not exactly sure what he's asking.
So I think what he's talking about is how do you make, well, no, I want to reframe it. How do you make sure that the people that you're talking to are qualified ethically, ethically qualified? So I think that takes a little time. I
Sure.
think I remember I found someone in my community, a writer, who I was excited to work with. I needed some editing help, and he needed some illustration work. So we both did a trade, and I thought, wow, this is going to be awesome. And then he turned out to be extremely toxic. He did, and it's just the most perfect word for him. I realized, oh my gosh, I'm so glad I didn't overcommit to this guy, because I can't work with him. He's there's too much negativity, and he was grabbing as much as he could from me and my community. He wanted in on my community, and he was very, very forceful, and I had to back away, and we had some issues, but luckily I hadn't jumped in too far. Um, but
Ooh,
Ray's asking also about common design standards,
yes, I
styles.
saw that. That's a great question.
Yeah, that's a great question, and I think a lot of there's it's hard to find someone who has the same style as you, and I'm not sure you want that. And
Yeah.
maybe those are the people you pass certain jobs over to.
Possibly. I think it all comes down really to, and we've talked about this already,
Uh-huh.
trust. Trust is the important thing.
Right.
And trust takes time. Trust is not something you give over lightly. Um, so when you find people that you can work with, people that you can communicate with,
Yeah.
and you can be vulnerable too, because a lot of community is about a place where you feel safe. And when you feel safe, you can be vulnerable. You can talk about times that didn't work for you. You can talk about uh, processes that you have that you are unclear about, or that you don't have confidence in, and you hope that your community won't exploit that vulnerability. Um, and that again, it all takes time. And you're going to get burned. There are going to be times where you put trust in somebody that you should not have put trust into.
Right.
I think I can't, there are more times than I have fingers on my hands that I have worked with somebody that I probably shouldn't have worked with, that I put trust in somebody I probably shouldn't have put trust in. But that is also part of the process. You learn where your tolerance levels are.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think that's really key. And I think why I love joining communities. And more often than not, I will join communities very quietly for a while. I'll listen to that community. I'll see what the members are. I will I will find the people that I agree with, understand, and I'll reach out to those people, and then I'll slowly build into that community.
Yeah.
Um, when I'm creating a community, I really try to be as open to everyone as possible. I set down codes of conduct, super important, especially if you're creating a community online. You want to have a code of conduct in place that everyone can see, everyone can reference,
Mm.
and that you can go, look, you violated this code of conduct. I'm going to need to ask you to not come back, because that is cultivating a community means cultivating it. You need to understand when there are toxic members of your community and what to do with them, and that needs to be a community driven thing, not an ego driven thing. So having a code of conduct in place that you can reference, everyone understands, that makes it easier to be able to do that.
I have a question about that. Is that something that you would just share with your community?
Like, for example, Freelance Fandango that I host, we have a code of conduct. We have a Facebook page. On that Facebook page, the code of conduct is placed right there. If need be, I reference to a link to that code of conduct. And what I will usually do is, if somebody violates the code of conduct, which doesn't happen very often, I will reach out to them privately. I'll reference the code of conduct.
Yeah.
I'll ask them to change their behavior. If they choose not to change their behavior, we move on to more punitive steps. But it's these need to be people, your community or communities, because I strongly encourage you being part of more than one. Um, they need to be a place where you feel safe, because it's your job, it's your career. It's not just you. It's not just a social group. It will influence how you do business. So finding the right people to connect to is important, not only for your own sanity, is important for your business.
Yeah. I was just looking at the handbook.
Mm-hmm.
Link right there if anyone's interested. On page 49, 48, it talks about ethical standards, and there's the Code of Fair Practice for the Graphic Communications Industry from 1948. It was revised in 1989. I haven't read far enough to see if it's been further revised, but you can see on page 49 here a list of the Code of Fair Practice. There are 15. Nope. Next page. There are 29 articles. So, for example, there should be no charges to the buyer for revisions or retakes made necessary by errors on the part of the artist or the artist representative. I mean, some of these are general. These might not apply to you, but what it does is it kind of sets standards and sets expectations of how to conduct your business. And, whether you're working with someone who uses the book or even owns the book, I don't think it takes very long to determine whether or not they are um, morally, ethically, where you want them to be.
I was wondering where you're going with that. Yeah.
Yeah, I know. But also, it's important to kind of read through the list of the Code of Fair Practice. I'm sure you can find it online as well, and just kind of make sure check yourself. Because sometimes we don't know what we don't know.
Sure. Yeah. Oh, I think that's one of the best parts of joining a community is to learn the things you don't know.
Oh,
absolutely. Absolutely. Be open to the idea that you are not the expert necessarily in the room.
That's
Be
why I love
that.
talking with you, because I learn so much from you, and I learn another way of thinking things, or even just saying things a little more positively, like you did about 10 minutes ago. That was great. And I had Joe on as a guest last week, and Joe was wonderful with some gems that I hadn't even thought about. And it's really important to not be in a bubble, not be in a vacuum.
Absolutely.
I have never wanted to do Mind Your Creative Business by myself, because I'm just going to be blabbing away, and you don't get anyone pushing back at you. And that's really important in your business, in your associations,
in your life. I'll be the first to admit it's important to, we as designers have a reputation of being a bit opinionated. Let's just put it that way. We have designers have a reputation of knowing what's right. Right?
Okay.
So it's important to know when that is appropriate and when it's not appropriate. And when communicating with other designers, I think it's often easy for us to be like, well, I'm going to judge them immediately. Can they do this? Can they do that? Where are we going? What's going on? Like, are they better than me? Are they worse than me? Where can we go? Prima donna-ish. Sure, Ray. That is certainly, there's been a lot of, I like to, I design is a super important part of my life. and cultivating relationships with designers is very important. I learned very early in my career that I could present a person who has it all figured out, right? Or I could present a person who's always learning. I
Uh-huh.
would much rather be someone who constantly learns than someone who pretends that they have everything figured out. And I think opening yourself up to a community experience, be the first person more than the second person. You come into a community thinking that you are the best thing this community is ever going to see. I don't think you're going to make the kind of connections you want to make than if you come in as somebody who wants to learn from that community.
Yeah,
So enter into a community with the idea that you have something to learn from these people. They might have something to learn from you. Absolutely. That's how it works. But you need to be open to the idea that you want something out of this community. And that something isn't necessarily just, I need more clients. I need more like range. I need this to work for me. Communities work together.
that's right.
Um, so I think if there's nothing else that this talk generates, I think that's the most important thing, is that be a part of a community. Don't be the one that the spotlight always hits. Don't feel like you need to be the best in the room. The idea of finding a community is that ability to be open and vulnerable and find the people that you trust. So,
That's right.
and I think very often we don't do that. We don't feel safe in doing that, especially in design.
Yeah, I think for each person, it's important to figure out for themselves what it's going to take to trust the person you're adding to your community. And for example, Ray was asking about whether or not to do a test project with someone. If that's what it takes, great. I just beg of you, it should not be a real project. We should not be taking advantage of each other. And I don't think that you were suggesting that, Ray. I just want to make it very clear that it's important that we don't take free work, because that's not supporting the community. So
I love practice. Practice activities that you can do as a group
yeah,
are great because you can learn from those, like drawing challenges, for example. That the very minimum are wonderful things that you can do with your community that you can learn from other people. They can learn from you. You can see techniques. Skill sharing, absolutely important. Absolutely important.
mhm.
And I absolutely agree with both Ed and Ray. No one should condone free work. Free work is not part of the equation. Yeah, training sessions, absolutely.
Oh my
Practice
God.
is key.
You know,
Practice
when my wife was looking for a job after business school, they would, one of the stories she would tell is they would sit you down and they'd say, "Tell us how many yellow cars are in that parking garage right there from this seat." And so they would watch and listen as she or the other applicants would talk through how they would come up with the answer. Of course, you're not necessarily going to have the right answer, and it doesn't matter. Like, you could end up saying two, but if your logic was sound, and there were like 100, if your logic is sound, then that's the part that matters. So it doesn't even have to be a finished product. It can be, show me a sketch of how you would start this, and then just talk to me, and I'll ask you where you would go next. Like Voltron.
I'm sorry, I saw that response and I immediately started laughing. Now I want to design a T-shirt that's like "Design Voltron."
Oh, I love that.
Yeah.
I want to keep talking, but I also want to stop right there on Voltron. No, but we can keep going. Thank you, Ray. Yes, we are going over time, as I mentioned already. There's so much to talk about here, but also I just want to mention, if anyone has to jump off, that after today's Mind Your Creative Business, James and I are going to be taking a break from this talk. you can
At
find
least for a couple months.
at
Yeah.
least for a few months, and then we'll reassess our schedules. In the meantime, you can rewatch on YouTube the guild's social networks on YouTube platforms, LinkedIn, Facebook, and X. Uh, See how cool I am.
Super
And
cool.
you can rewatch any of those. I think we'll get alerts if you at us in a comment if you have any questions. Just be a little patient with us for our answers. Um, Ray, I definitely Ray Ray here has just some of the most amazing questions, and I have fumbled the ball on connecting with him properly. Ray, I admit that right here publicly, and I look forward to actually connecting with you because you have some great insight and some wonderful questions. So maybe when we come back with Mind Your Creative Business, maybe we can have Ray on as a special guest.
Ooh, that'd be nice.
I know, I like that a
And I
lot.
would love to see you at Freelance Fandango.
Yeah,
And not just Ray, like everybody. I would love
yeah.
to see. We do it every Sunday at 10 a.m. Pacific time, which is my time. Adjust accordingly. I don't do math, so I generally don't do. But yeah, it's a great community. We have wonderful discussions every single week, focusing on freelance creative businesses. Sometimes we talk just about what everybody's doing. Sometimes we get into really deep conversations about what the industry is like. How do we change it? How do we make it better for everyone? Um,
People like Ray, that's your event right there. And then I'm going to give you guys another second to click it if you want with your phone. And then I'm going to share another one that's also a great opportunity. It only happens once a month. It's Show Off and Tell. I think the next one is December. That's the one we just had. I think it's December 13 is the next one. It's a Wednesday, and that's an event that you can come to and show off what you're working on, and if you want to ask
great
questions too. It's a great
Absolutely.
I just found all these QR code thingies on this interface, so that's why I'm like, now here's the Guild Handbook. There's also the Lone Artist. That happens on November 30th. Oh, what's today? Oh, it's coming up in a couple weeks. So connect, join us, be part of the community. We hope you will. We hope you'll be part of us, and if not, find other people who you can connect with, and if it's important to you that it's someone local. James, what do you think? If it's important to you that you need someone who's local that you can kind of meet up with in person, if that's your kind of
I'm a big proponent on cultivating a at least understanding the other designers in your area, because they're the ones that influence your business the most.
yeah,
Yeah. So, I mean, you can have conversations with designers all across the country and you can learn a lot from them, but you're going to make the biggest impact on your business when you connect with the designers that are working in your area. Because more often than not, at least a portion of your work is coming from local businesses. So you need to be able to price and work with other designers in a way that benefits your local businesses.
that's right.
Uh,
That's right. Oh boy, this has been. There were so many things that we wanted to talk about. I think we there were a few things we skipped today. So that just means that we will have to come back at some
that's
point.
right. That's right. This is a big topic. I mean, we could talk about this topic for 2 hours
Well,
easily.
we've been talking about it over the months,
Yeah.
just kind of interspersed a little bit. I mentioned that I'm part of the Caffeinated Illustrators. I mentioned that a
Mhm.
couple months ago, and that was my attempt. Just like James put together his own local group, that was my local group of illustrators that we would meet and show our work and ooh and ah. And what was really interesting about it, just in case you're worried about competition, what's interesting about it is we're all illustrators, but all of us had a different niche. Two of them were editorial illustrators, but completely different. Uh, Three, four of us were kind of children's book type of illustrators, but completely different. And we didn't feel like we were stepping on each other's toes or hiding anything from each other, because there's enough work out there if you look for it. And that is the most important thing I can say. If you know how to look for it and if you can chase it,
That's another topic that we
oh
need
my
to talk
gosh.
about for sure.
Yeah. I mean, I've been freelancing for 30 years, and it's getting harder to find the jobs without actually kind of creating calluses on your hand. You have to put yourself out there, and if you can't put yourself out there, if it's too hard, then you can always work for it, find a company to work for, or you can, if you're freelance, or you can hopefully get an agent, and they can do the work for you, hopefully. But it's not magic. An agent is not magic, and you still have to put in a lot of work. So I want to impress upon anyone here who is a freelancer, if you're having a hard time, that's normal. You have to be pushing real hard all the time. And Elise Benin, that's ILISEBENUN, that's the marketing mentor. She's amazing. Just check out, even just get on her mailing list and get inspired every time she sends an email. Oh, I can type it
You should add that
into the chat. Oh, I haven't been looking at the chat. Sorry.
No, that's all right.
Benin.
We're almost 15 minutes over now. This is just gravy on top of the already.
Let's see. I'm going to show it right there.
There you go.
Oh, I spelled it right too. That's an I at the end. She's not like llama. Lelise. No. Elise Benin, marketing mentor. Her emails are inspiring. Her LinkedIn. Oh, I recommend that too. Her LinkedIn is amazing. And yeah, so I think this is probably a good place for us to kind of say goodbye.
Because if we don't say goodbye, we'll probably just keep talking.
Well, I'm actually moderating a webinar in an hour for the Guild. Also, it's Christopher Hart talking about how to get published. And Christopher Hart is awesome. You know him. You don't realize, you might not recognize his name right away. The minute you see one of his books, you're like, oh, he does the how to draw manga. He does how to draw cartoons, how to draw the human face, how to draw shading, so he's someone that I've met because of the Guild, because of volunteering through the Guild.
Do you have a QR code for that?
No, it's too late. You can't sign up.
Oh, really?
But you can, in about a week, it'll be in the webinar archives at the Graphic Arts Guild. And I wonder if I have a QR code for that. And you can watch it at that time. There is a cost to it, unless you're a member. I don't see one, but there's a link right there to join the Guild. That'll bring you to the website, and you can go find the webinar archive, because there are a lot of webinars on there.
Hundreds of hours of content in there.
Yeah. That's right. If you're a member, totally free. Every one of them, totally free. Just start going through. And, Ray said it best.
Sure. So I want to thank everybody for sticking with us for an extra 15 minutes. I really appreciate that. Yeah. This is an important topic, probably one that we could continue to talk about up until your next webinar. But I think this is a good place to stop. I also want to take a moment and just say that, I haven't been part of this Mind Your Creative Business for too long, only a couple months. But I've really enjoyed my time here, being able to talk about important subjects, being able to spend some time with my friend Ed, and just being able to connect with other designers out there. So thank you, everybody, for being here, and thank you, Ed, for organizing all this.
I loved having you, and I love talking about all these topics. So, but you're right. Without everyone watching us, this wouldn't. No one.
We would still talk.
We would still talk.
It wouldn't be as beneficial to other people.
Right. I don't know where I was going with my sentence either. So thank you for cutting into it, because I was like. So yeah, thank you to all who have joined us. Thank you to everyone who's going to watch us afterwards. Hi, Mom. So have a great one, everyone. Happy holidays to you all.
Yeah,
And
happy
we hope to see
holidays,
you
everyone.
again sometime in 2024. Keep an eye out on the calendar, the Guild's calendar. Get on the mailing list. You'll just get an email with all the updates of what events are coming up, including Freelance Fandango and Lone Artist and Show Off and Tell. We hope to see you around. Take care, everyone.